1. Chronostasis. You glance at the clock on the wall, and for a split second, the thin red second hand simply refuses to move. It hangs there, suspended in space. You wait, your breath caught in your throat, convinced the battery has finally died. But then, a fraction of a moment too late, it violently ticks forward, immediately resuming its normal rhythm. You brush this off as a trick of the light, but what you just experienced was a glitch in the simulation of your reality. You just caught your brain actively rewriting your perception of time backward. Every time you shift your gaze from one point to another, a rapid movement known as a saccade, your eyes blur the incoming visual input. If your brain were to process that continuous stream of motion blur, your entire life would look like a nauseating, shaky handheld camera desperately panning across a room. To save you from this endless vertigo, your visual cortex simply deletes the footage. It cuts those blurred frames entirely, rendering you effectively blind for milliseconds at a time, thousands of times a day. But you cannot exist with terrifying black voids of nothingness constantly interrupting your vision. In a groundbreaking 2001 study published in the journal Nature, researcher Keelan Yarrow discovered exactly how your brain patches over this problem. The precise moment your eyes land on their final target, like that ticking clock, your brain takes that clear, static image and literally stretches it backward in time to fill the empty, deleted gap. It edits your timeline after the fact, pasting the present moment over the missing past. That first second seems to last twice as long because your brain artificially extended it to cover up the time you spent completely blind. You are living in a constant, hidden delay. What you think of as right now is nothing more than a stitched-together patchwork of retroactive edits. Your brain operates as a desperate post-production studio, constantly color-correcting and fixing the raw footage of your life before you are consciously allowed to experience it. You implicitly trust your perception of time as an absolute truth, but your consciousness is continuously freezing, snipping, and pasting false temporal memories over the gaps in your vision. How much of the reality you are experiencing in this exact moment is actually happening? And how much is just your brain scrambling to cover up the terrifying blind spots of your existence? 2. Jamais Vu. You are standing in the middle of your kitchen, a room you have walked into 1,000 times before. You know exactly where the glasses are kept. You know the hum of the refrigerator. You know the texture of the tiles under your feet. But suddenly, a terrifying wave of alienation washes over you. The room feels entirely foreign. The angle of the countertops seems deeply wrong. The shadows look alien, and you are gripped by the chilling sensation that you have never stepped foot in this place in your entire life. Or perhaps you stare at a perfectly ordinary word, and after repeating it out loud a few times, it completely loses its meaning, devolving into a bizarre sequence of meaningless sounds. This is not a lapse in your memory. You are experiencing the terrifying opposite of déjà vu. This is Jamais Vu, a psychological glitch where your brain abruptly strips the meaning away from the deeply familiar, leaving you stranded with nothing but raw, unprocessed sensory data. In a landmark 2006 study at Leeds University, cognitive psychologist Chris Moulin successfully induced this exact phenomenon in a laboratory. He discovered a neurological circuit breaker known as semantic satiation. When a specific neural pathway is fired repeatedly, whether by looking at the same word or walking through the same familiar environment, the neurons responsible for attaching meaning and context to that input become exhausted. They fatigue and simply shut down. When those neurons stop firing, the cognitive bridge between perception and understanding collapses. You are still seeing the environment perfectly clearly. Your vision has not failed you, but the mental framework that tells you this is your home has temporarily short-circuited. You are experiencing reality exactly as a newborn baby does, as a chaotic, meaningless void of shapes and colors entirely devoid of context. Your entire sense of comfort and belonging is an active illusion generated by your cerebral cortex. The people you love, the spaces you inhabit, the language you use to structure your thoughts, none of it possesses inherent meaning. It is only familiar because your brain is continuously injecting that familiarity into your consciousness, running a background program to make the world feel safe. When that program crashes, you are violently reminded of the cold truth. The universe you live in is fundamentally alien. You are just a stranger wandering through a meaningless simulation, desperately relying on exhausted neurons to convince you that you belong here. 3. Anton Syndrome. You wake up one morning, stretch your arms, and walk directly into the solid wooden frame of your bedroom door. You brush it off, blaming the dim light, and make your way to the kitchen, stumbling over a chair you swear wasn't there last night. If someone were to ask you what you see, you would describe the room in perfect, vivid detail. You would tell them about the sunlight filtering through the blinds and the exact shade of the coffee mug on the counter. You would defend your vision aggressively, completely certain of everything you are observing. There is only one terrifying problem. Your eyes are completely dead, your optic nerves are severed, and you have been entirely blind for days. This is a documented, horrific medical anomaly known as Anton Syndrome. It occurs when a specific type of catastrophic damage strikes the occipital lobe, the visual processing center at the back of your brain. The physical hardware of your eyes stops sending signals, disconnecting you from the visual world. But the communication pathways to your conscious awareness are also destroyed. Your brain never receives the error message that the cameras have been shut off. Faced with a sudden lack of sensory input, your mind does not plunge you into darkness. Instead, it desperately panics and begins rendering a perfect, high-definition hallucination of reality to replace the missing feed. Patients with Anton syndrome genuinely, fiercely believe they can see. Their brain confabulates an entire visual universe in real time, pulling from memory and expectation to paint a flawless, unbroken simulation over the pitch-black void. When they walk into walls or trip over furniture, their brain instantly generates a rationalization. The lighting was bad. The object was moved. The consciousness completely overrides the physical reality, prioritizing the stability of the simulation over the truth of the broken hardware. If your brain is capable of generating a flawless, unbroken visual reality while you are completely blind, how can you trust anything you are looking at right now? Your eyes are not windows to the outside world. They are merely data cables feeding suggestions to a supercomputer locked inside a pitch-black skull. You have never actually seen the world. You have only ever seen the glowing, rendered projection your brain projects on the back of your eyelids. You feel absolute certainty in your vision. But Anton's syndrome proves that absolute certainty is exactly what the brain manufactures when it is lying to you the most. 4. Saccadic masking. You are staring at the screen in front of you. You believe you are watching a continuous, unbroken live stream of reality. But if I were to ask you to quickly glance at the ceiling, then back down to this text, and then over to the door, you would not realize that you just went entirely blind 3 separate times. You assume your vision functions like a sweeping video camera, smoothly panning across the room to take in the environment. But that is a lie your brain tells you to keep you from panicking. In reality, your visual cortex shuts down completely every time your eyes move rapidly. This phenomenon is called saccadic masking. Modern eye-tracking studies have proven that during these rapid eye movements, or saccades, your brain actively suppresses visual processing. If it didn't, the sheer volume of motion blur generated by your sweeping eyes would overwhelm your nervous system. To prevent this, your brain simply cuts the feed. It unplugs the cameras while they are moving, only turning them back on when your eyes have locked onto their next target. Because your eyes dart around constantly, to read, to scan a room, to look for threats, these micro moments of total blindness add up. Over the course of a normal waking day, you are completely, functionally blind for a total of up to 45 minutes. Almost an entire hour of your day is spent in absolute darkness, and yet you never notice. Your brain seamlessly stitches the static frames together, creating the illusion of a smooth, uninterrupted cinematic experience. You are not experiencing life as it happens. You are watching a delayed, heavily edited rendering of the world, pieced together from a series of static photographs. Every day, your consciousness is suspended for 45 minutes, replaced by a fabricated bridge of continuity. If your brain is capable of hiding nearly an hour of total blindness from you every single day, seamlessly patching over the gaps in your perception without your knowledge or consent. What else is it editing out of your reality? You trust your senses implicitly, completely unaware that you are watching a heavily redacted version of the universe. 5. False awakening. Think about a typical Tuesday morning. The alarm rings, and you drag yourself out of bed. You walk to the bathroom, splash cold water on your face, and feel the chilling shock against your skin. You pour a cup of coffee, feeling the exact weight of the ceramic mug in your hand and the bitter taste on your tongue. You check your phone, read a perfectly coherent text message from a friend, and begin getting dressed for work. Everything is completely ordinary, completely mundane, until you wake up again. You open your eyes and you are back in bed. The alarm is ringing for the first time. The bathroom, the cold water, the coffee, the text message, none of it actually happened. You just experienced a false awakening. This is not a normal dream. This is a terrifying glitch in your brain's virtual reality engine. In a standard dream, environments are surreal and physics are flexible. But during a false awakening, your prefrontal cortex boots up a hyper-realistic, one-to-one simulation of your physical bedroom, while your body remains entirely paralyzed in REM sleep. Polysomnography monitors attached to patients during these events show that the brain's logical waking centers are firing as if the person is fully conscious, even though the body is deeply asleep. Your brain possesses the processing power to generate a flawless, physical duplicate of your immediate reality, complete with accurate textures, gravity, and even the ability to read written text. It perfectly anticipates exactly what you would do next, rendering the environment in real time before you even make a choice. This glitch raises a deeply unsettling question about the nature of your consciousness. If your mind can independently generate a perfect, interactive simulation of your waking life, a simulation so flawless that you genuinely believe you are awake while walking through it, how do you know you are awake right now? If the brain can effortlessly synthesize the feeling of cold water, the weight of a mug, and the logic of a morning routine, then physical reality is not required for you to experience physical sensations. You could be entirely immobilized right now, trapped in a highly detailed rendering generated by a sleeping brain, desperately waiting for the real alarm to sound. 6. Folie à deux. In 2016, a pair of twins named Sabita and Ursula presented a terrifying puzzle to medical professionals. One of the twins began experiencing severe psychotic delusions, believing they were being hunted by a shadow organization. They saw hallucinated figures and heard voices whispering threats. This was a tragedy, but tragically normal for a psychotic break. The terrifying anomaly was the other twin. The perfectly healthy twin, with absolutely zero history of mental illness, began physically hallucinating the exact same shadows. They heard the exact same voices. They shared the exact same delusion. This is folie à deux, or shared psychotic disorder. It proves that reality is not an objective anchor. It is a neurological consensus, and under the right conditions, perception acts exactly like an infectious virus. When two people live in close physical and emotional proximity, their neural networks constantly mirror and sync with one another to build a shared understanding of the world. But when one brain's reality rendering engine fundamentally breaks, the other brain doesn't necessarily reject the bad data. Instead, out of a desperate evolutionary drive for social cohesion, the healthy brain begins to mimic the corrupted code. The healthy person doesn't just pretend to see the hallucinations to comfort their loved one. Their visual and auditory cortices actually rewrite themselves to perceive the phantom threats. Neurological mimicry overrides physical reality. The brain decides that agreeing with the only other consciousness in the room is more important than accurately reporting the sensory data coming from the eyes and ears. Your entire concept of reality is deeply fragile, tethered directly to the people around you. You believe you are an independent observer of the universe, processing objective facts through your own secure hardware. But folie à deux reveals that your mind is an open-source network, vulnerable to malware from the people you trust the most. If your brain is willing to literally hallucinate demons into existence simply because someone you love insists they are there, then your reality is nothing more than a localized hallucination that you and your social circle have unconsciously agreed upon. You are not seeing the truth. You are just seeing what everyone else has infected you to see. 7. Reduplicative paramnesia. Imagine taking a long flight and checking into a hotel room in a foreign city. You unpack your bags, sit on the edge of the bed, and look out the window at an unfamiliar skyline. You are thousands of miles from home, yet you turn to your traveling companion and calmly explain that you are actually sitting in the guest bedroom of your own house. You acknowledge the hotel furniture and the strange city outside, but you possess the absolute, unshakable conviction that your home has been duplicated and physically transported to this new geographic location. This bizarre delusion was first documented by neurologist Arnold Pick, who linked it to severe lesions in the right hemisphere of the brain. It is known as reduplicative paramnesia, and it exposes a massive glitch in the brain's spatial mapping software. To navigate the world, your mind constantly builds and updates a 3D architectural blueprint of your environment. When you enter a new space, the brain usually creates a new file. But in patients with this condition, the filing system catastrophically fails. Instead of generating a new map, the brain accidentally hits copy and paste on a deeply familiar location, like a childhood home or a local hospital, and overlays it onto the current physical environment. The conscious mind is presented with two entirely contradictory pieces of data. The eyes clearly see a hotel room, but the brain's internal GPS violently insists they are sitting in their own living room. Unable to resolve the conflict, the brain generates an insane rationalization. It decides the location must exist in two places simultaneously. Your sense of place, the grounding feeling that you exist in a specific geographic location at this exact second, is completely synthetic. It is not an objective fact of physics. It is a software output generated by your right hemisphere. Reduplicative paramnesia proves that your brain can seamlessly duplicate spatial reality, convincing you that you are sitting in a room that does not exist. You trust the ground beneath your feet and the walls around you, assuming they are fixed constants in the universe. But your location is just a temporary file your brain has rendered. And at any moment, a simple copy-paste error could overwrite the entire map. 8. Alice syndrome. You are sitting in a perfectly normal room, talking to a friend, when the geometry of reality suddenly collapses. Without warning, the walls begin to stretch and warp, rushing away from you as if the room is violently expanding. You look down at your own hands and recoil in terror. Your fingers have ballooned to massive, grotesque proportions, while your arms feel impossibly thin and elongated. The coffee table shrinks until it looks like dollhouse furniture. You haven't taken any drugs. You aren't dreaming. Your brain's spatial processing engine has simply crashed. This terrifying distortion is a documented neurological condition called Alice in Wonderland syndrome. First classified by Dr. John Todd in 1955, this glitch occurs when a highly specific region of your brain, the temporoparieto-occipital carifer, becomes dangerously hyperactive. This junction is the central processing unit where your brain integrates visual data with your sense of physical touch and spatial awareness. It is responsible for calculating exactly where your body ends and the rest of the world begins. When this region glitches, your brain completely loses the ability to measure scale, distance, and the physical boundaries of your own physical form. Your eyes are still functioning perfectly, sending accurate optical data into your skull, but the software responsible for translating that raw data into a stable, 3D environment is failing catastrophically. The brain begins rendering objects as massively swollen or terrifyingly distant, completely overriding the physical truth of the room you are sitting in. You trust your perception of scale. You believe that a chair is chair-sized, and that your body fits neatly within the physical dimensions of the universe. But Alice syndrome proves that size and distance are not objective properties of reality that you are passively observing. They are arbitrary calculations generated in real time by a delicate cluster of neurons. If a simple electrical surge in your parietal lobe can instantly turn your living room into a warped, terrifying funhouse, then the solid, stable universe you think you live in does not actually exist. The geometry of your reality is just a rendering trick, a fragile illusion maintained by a supercomputer that is always one glitch away from crashing. 9. Aphantasia. Close your eyes. Now picture an apple. You can probably see it floating in the dark space behind your eyelids. You can picture its shiny red skin, the curve of the stem, the shadow it casts. You can rotate it in your mind, visualizing it in perfect, high-definition 3D. This internal visual simulation is the foundation of human imagination. Now imagine closing your eyes and seeing absolutely nothing. No apples, no colors, just an endless, silent, pitch-black void. For millions of people, this is their permanent reality. This condition is called aphantasia. It is the complete, total blindness of the mind's eye. Until recently, science assumed that visual imagination was a mandatory requirement for human consciousness. But in 2015, cognitive neurologist Adam Zeman published groundbreaking fMRI studies proving that a massive percentage of the population possesses a brain that physically cannot generate mental images. When patients with aphantasia try to picture the face of their own mother, their visual cortex remains completely dark. The rendering software is missing, yet these people live entirely normal lives. They have memories, they experience emotions, and they solve complex problems. They know what an apple is. They simply access the concept as raw, invisible data rather than rendering a 3D model. This exposes a shattering truth about the nature of your own mind. If human consciousness can operate perfectly without generating a single mental image, then the visual simulation you call imagination is completely unnecessary. Why does your brain expend massive amounts of energy projecting a high-definition movie theater inside your skull when it doesn't have to? You believe your thoughts are fundamentally visual because that is the only operating system you have ever known. But aphantasia proves that your entire internal reality, every memory you visualize, every scenario you picture, is just an optional graphical user interface. You are running a heavy, resource-intensive simulation just to navigate your own memories. Your consciousness is not tied to the images you see in your head. Those images are just a localized hallucination, a completely unnecessary piece of software that your brain could uninstall at any moment without warning. 10. The Truman Show delusion. You are walking down a crowded street. A stranger bumps into your shoulder and quickly apologizes. A car drives past, the driver briefly making eye contact with you. A barista hands you a coffee and smiles. These are ordinary, meaningless interactions. But suddenly, you notice a pattern. The stranger's apology felt rehearsed. The driver's eye contact lingered a fraction of a second too long. The barista's smile wasn't genuine, it was performed. In a flash of terrifying clarity, you realize the horrifying truth. None of these people are real. They are actors, and your entire life is a heavily scripted reality television show being broadcast to an invisible audience. In 2008, psychiatrist Dr. Joel Gold identified this terrifying new psychological phenomenon and named it the Truman Show delusion. This is an emergent psychosis, a modern glitch where the brain's pattern recognition software violently misfires. Your brain is designed to constantly scan your environment for social cues, desperately trying to predict human behavior to keep you safe. But in patients experiencing this delusion, the pattern recognition engine goes into overdrive. It begins connecting completely unrelated data points, a passing glance, a misplaced set of keys, a repetitive commercial on the radio, and interprets them as evidence of a massive, coordinated conspiracy. But the most disturbing part of this glitch is not the paranoia. It is the fact that human psychosis is updating itself to match modern technology. Before the invention of cameras, people hallucinated demons and gods. Today, brains are physically rewiring themselves to hallucinate hidden surveillance and broadcast networks. Culture is physically shaping the architecture of human madness. Your grip on reality is entirely dependent on your brain's ability to filter out meaningless coincidences. But if your pattern recognition software can be hacked by the culture you consume, convincing you that your entire existence is a scripted simulation. How can you trust any conclusion your mind reaches? What if the reality you are experiencing right now is just another hallucination, patched together by a brain desperately trying to find meaning in a chaotic void? If you think your brain is the only thing glitching, you need to look at the fabric of the universe itself. The simulation isn't just breaking down inside your skull, it is falling apart right in front of you. Click the video on your screen right now to watch every mind-blowing coincidence, glitch and paradox that proves reality is broken. I will see you there.